you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Good morning and welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. We will go over Pennsylvania today. We have a new voter file analysis in Pennsylvania. Looks like I'm a little translucent. I don't know what's going on here. It's magic. It's magic. All right. So if you're on locals, if you're on the locals community, you got it. All right. With some context. And we're going to do this in the context of the last two election cycles. Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. The last three. Let's include the midterms in there as well because it does matter. And then also the special election that we just saw. Okay. I think it's while you're looking at this and you got an image up. I'm going to share that image too. But if you got the PDF, if you're a locals member, sign up peoplespundit.locals.com. You'll get these in PDF format. I have a lot more detail about age, about race, congressional district, you name it. Right. It's in there. Religion's affiliation, which is not on a voter registration card, but we infer it, obviously, through other things. Other data attributes, as well as a host of other data attributes that are really cool to look at. All right. First things first. When Donald Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016, it was fluctuating. D11, D13, depending on the month. Okay? The electorate, according to exit polls, which don't rely too much on because they're garbage, was D+3. This last special election was R+2. All right? 44 Republican, 42 Democrat, the rest being independents. What should jump out at you when I put this up in a second here, which I'm going to do? What should jump out at you immediately? And actually, let me put it up. Compared to Ohio, Wisconsin, and the other states that we've been looking at, specifically Wisconsin though, right? Ohio, about, a much smaller share of the electorate is unknown, not party, not one of the major two-party affiliated. Iowa has a decent one, but they tend to lean Republican, all right? Which is different than Wisconsin, for instance, where Democrats get their unaffiliated vote out a much more efficiently than Republicans do, all right? In Pennsylvania, why this is so important. This should tell you right off the bat. Pennsylvania is a base election state. There aren't enough independents, even if you win them overwhelmingly, there aren't enough independents to overtake the Democratic lean if you don't get your base out and you're the Republican Party. All right? You have to get your base out. Both sides. D46, R40, and the rest is independent now. That's nothing. 14%. We're at a point in Pennsylvania where Republicans are outvoting Democrats. Democrats still have a larger pool, which is what I think we saw in 18. Without Trump on the ballot, without decent candidates, without America First kind of candidates, working class candidates, these Republican voters didn't come out. Now, Donald Trump was not on the ballot in the special election, but what was? Lockdowns, the governor's emergency powers, his ability to keep abortion clinics open while closing religious institutions, his ability to keep abortion clinics open while closing the ABC liquor up the road. Way of life stuff. Lockdowns are deeply, deeply unpopular with the Republican base, and it got them to the polls. So much so that we know the rest of the story. Lockdowns were the lockdown powers, the emergency powers, the propositions, whether or not to leave the governor to have his emergency powers during either crisis management, or pandemics, stripped. 52-48. Importantly, a lot of these areas in Allegheny County and even in the southeastern part of the state, which is getting more and more Democratic, those voters rejected them. All right? So it may not be that easy to get the Republican base to the polls if Republicans make poor choices in nominating their candidates going into 2022 and Donald Trump is not on the campaign trail. Okay? Because listen, sometimes I equivocate, this state did worse under Trump, this state did better for the Republicans. There is no doubt. This is not debatable. The Republican Party in Pennsylvania was in complete disarray before Donald Trump. It had no chance with a regular Republican candidate to make this state competitive. 4 points, 4.5 points, it's about as close as somebody like Mitt Romney would get, even winning places like Chester County. Wasn't going to happen. This is Donald Trump and Donald Trump's message. It has nothing to do with Ronna McDaniel. It has nothing to do with Mitch McConnell. It has nothing to do with Kevin McCarthy. It has nothing to do with Paul Ryan. It has nothing to do with anybody else but a person named Donald J. Trump. This shift from like D plus 13 on the voter file to D plus 6, which is, ironically, still, what I'm telling you is Pennsylvania is still very dirty. If you cleaned up the voter files in Philadelphia and Allegheny, and actually Allegheny is not even as bad as Philadelphia. If you cleaned up those voter files, that D plus 6 would vanish. It would be much closer. How do we know that? Look in your PDFs. Look at unique individuals, unique addresses, unique households. It's all very indicative of dirty rolls. Change of address flags. People are leaving, by the way, leaving that region of the state, not gaining populations, leaving these economically depressed inner cities in Pennsylvania. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of change of address flags. And if they cleaned it up, it would be much closer. Much closer. All right, but you still can't do that when Donald Trump won it in 2016 and he carried independents by about 4 points, if I remember correctly, something around that, 4 or 5 points. He still carried more Democrats than the exit poll suggested. The numbers just don't add up any other way. Unlike other states where we just saw we talked about the cannibalization of independents, only some of that happened in Pennsylvania. A lot of what happened in Pennsylvania was anywhere not in the southeastern part of the state, including Allegheny. Democrats saw their registrations bleed away to Republicans. There have been hundreds of thousands upon hundreds of thousands who have changed their registration to Republican. They have registered new voters in parts of the state where the working class has just given up, and peeled off some independents, which left the independent vote much closer this time. Okay? Whereas Trump carried them before, those people already changed their registration to Republican. All right? So, the idea, what Chuck Schumer said, for every working class, voter we lose in Western Pennsylvania, in Erie County, Pennsylvania, which after the ballots arrived 48 and 72 hours later via the U.S. Postal Service backdating them, flipped to Joe Biden.
The only thing
without those votes, he would not have carried Erie County.
I'm just saying the USPS can't do much, but...
And it does increasingly look like, record by record by record, it does increasingly look like that there are enough illegal votes that exceed the margin of victory. Now, can you say without a doubt, well, that means Donald Trump won? No, you can't say it without a doubt. It's not statistical certainty. But you can say that it exceeded the margin of error, the margin of victory. Now, that's the case in Arizona. That's the case in Georgia. New Hampshire, I know you all have a ton of questions about. I don't know fully the situation over there, and I don't fully understand the situation over there, so I really don't want to comment on it yet. The allegation is that ballots that don't exist were counted. So there's numbering sequences that were fed through, the machines counted, but they don't actually exist in real form. I don't know that that's true yet. We'll just have to find out. All right, but nothing would surprise me after everything we have seen before. But, when you have a state attorney general saying, don't worry, this isn't over, we're going to find enough votes in Allegheny County, folks, something is not right. If you think voter fraud is not prevalent, or election fraud, voter fraud is different. Voter fraud is a voter taking it upon themselves to commit the act of fraud. Maybe you got an absentee ballot that doesn't belong to you, all right? You got it, it showed up at your door, it was a piece of mail, it showed up at your door, and you decided, hell, who's going to check? I'm going to fill in this ballot and send it back. Maybe you got 4 or 5 of them, as some people did. That's voter fraud. Election fraud is something very, very different. And for those who think that doesn't exist in Philadelphia, you're an idiot. You're naive, or you're an idiot. I don't know what to say. I mean, you could be both, or you can be one or the other. Just before this election, there was a massive FBI sting. Included election judges in wards throughout Philadelphia. Bernie was quiet as a mouse, but it even impacted him in his primary against Hillary Clinton. That's how far back some of this activity went. And actually, I think 2014 is where the investigation started. So it does happen. And if so the bottom line is what Schumer said is how many people, you lose one working class person in Erie County, you gain 3 more in southeastern Pennsylvania. That's not true. That is not true. Not as a matter of results and not as a matter of actual records. All right, so here we have the state of Pennsylvania. Some places I want to look at northeastern Pennsylvania. Biden, on election night, it was a very different story, and even the next day. Some of these areas that we're about to talk about, it's important that you guys understand. This is why chain of custody was so important, because Republicans did not secure, not only did they not secure, they didn't confirm what was outstanding. They didn't really know what was still in the mail. All right, so, and by the way, officials didn't tell you. They didn't want to tell you. We had the numbers of what was out and what was expected to be returned. That's why you got ranges on election night. What I am telling you is that they exceeded those ranges because they just kept coming. So in Lackawanna, Monroe, Luzerne, we saw very different results. Difference being a nice size correlation there being how many people voted by mail and how many people did not. Pennsylvania was not an early voting state. Understand this huge, enormous state changed its entire way of conducting elections within a 2-month period after rejecting early voting, even while the rest of the country was opening up. Florida, Arizona, huge percentages being absentee ballot voting, vote by mail. Not Pennsylvania. They simply did not do that. And they had this wonderful thing called in-person absentee ballot voting. That was special. I mean, we had this giant state that had never dealt with this before change how they conduct elections within 60 days. Does government do anything like that on that kind of a grand scale within 60 days without botching everything? No, of course not. Of course not. But now, look at those pie graphs. Look at the difference between Lackawanna and Luzerne. It's actually not as shocking, is it? So we're not... What I'm saying is you would think those pies look a lot different. But they don't. And Luzerne was a place where Republicans made big inroads. So was Monroe. In fact, nowhere did Democrats make big inroads with voter registrations outside of southeastern Pennsylvania. Even Bucks County, which used to be a Republican county, Donald Trump was expected to lose it by maybe, 10 or more. It ended up just like it did during 2016, Clinton versus Trump. It didn't really move at all. Similar counties like Chester moved quite a bit. But outside of Delaware, Montgomery, even Philadelphia, Democrats didn't add that many voter registrations because there aren't any new people running to move to Philadelphia. It's an economically depressed, high crime city, poorly run city. Its glory days are behind them. Way behind them. Now, there are arguments to make. Apache County in Arizona, and the entire Atlanta metro area in Georgia. There are arguments to make about them. They did see big population increases. Forget about the last 4 years. In the last 9 years, they've exploded. 2 of the metro areas in Texas, 2 of the largest metro areas in Texas, also happen to be some of the largest growing metro areas in the country. There's an explanation for that increase in registrations. So when we see them, we look at population gains, it's not a mystery. But in Philadelphia, there wasn't this giant boom of population gain. And there sure as hell wasn't a giant boom in Democrat voter registrations. That simply did not happen. In Delaware, Montgomery, areas like that, we did expect that. Democrats were doing a great job there. Even in Burke, other places, they were surprisingly strong until Republicans started to peel it away a little bit later. But anywhere outside of that in Pennsylvania, to include Allegheny County, where Republicans were out registering voters, out registering Democrats in voters. No kidding. Which tells you the Pittsburgh suburbs and working class suburbs were shifting from long-term working Democrat roots to Republicanism.
The maturation.
It was, yes, it's called political maturation. Right. That was happening. And yeah, and there is no evidence for these surges in Erie County where they were getting clobbered. There's no evidence for these surges in Lackawanna. There's no evidence for these surges in Monroe. It just didn't exist. Why it's so important to clean up voter rolls. Pennsylvania is among the most dirty. The most dirty.
They need a sanitation back.
And it's like Nevada in the sense where it's totally disproportionate. Yes, it's everywhere, and Republicans should not just focus on urban areas. It's everywhere. But it's badly, badly skewed toward blue areas. Philadelphia, Even more so than Allegheny. I mean, Allegheny doesn't even compete with Philadelphia when it comes to dirty rolls. That's the truth. Change of address flags, low-hanging fruit, things of this nature. I don't know how many voters, absentee ballot voters, personally spoke with, not just us checking records, personally spoke with these people. I did not mail in an absentee ballot. But I digress. In any event, let's take a look at this. Again, if you don't have it, then you'll just have to follow along with us. But if you want it, peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. But okay, there are the entire count here. And again, I'm excluding in this the dead and change of address flags, excluding movers. All right. Because we really don't want to look at that when we're trying to look at the legitimate landscape, political landscape of a state. Okay? All right. The count is 8,212,477. That includes, it's actually a rather big landline state. 4,414,000 landlines, a little over, but roughly. 4,525,257 mobiles, and 5,210,000 and almost 211,000 emails. All right. When we look at, and I think it's important to bring this up. I hope it doesn't slow it up, but it's important to bring this up real quick. Unique households, 5,667,000. Now, of course, you have multiple people registered to different households, right? Similar, the same households. Unique addresses, however, is only 4,440,000, which would automatically give you like, wow, it's a pretty big disparity. It's a pretty large disparity. Overall, when you look at, you know what, I could get them the actual number of change of address flags statewide, but it'll take a little bit to query, so we'll just let it go for now. But I'll put that up on locals for you guys. I know you want it. All right. Okay, so just by party, there's about, if we were to round up, about 3.3 million Republicans, 3,250,062 roughly. All right, or it's 3,249,062. I'm giving you exact. Rounding up, that's 40%. Democrats continuing to fall. They were just 48% September, before the election. Mm-hmm. All right, so they are continuing to fall another 2 points. They're down to 46% rounding, and it is a total of 3,805,521. The nuns, not everything else, just the nuns alone represent 943,583. So no party affiliations or nuns are about 11.5%. And there's about another 3 or so percent, 2.5%, 3% of 2.5. So a total of about 14% that are outside of, outside of two-party registrations. But out of that 14%, 11.5 are none or MPA. And then you have libertarians. They're only about a half, but they're 41,000 votes. Other is 50.9, right? There are all these. There is a slew. Independents, natural law, conservative, right to life, socialist workers, which they have like 20, right? Peace and freedom.
What's nuns?
Green. None means they don't have a party affiliation. They literally no party affiliation. We call them MPAs in Florida. All right. But, yeah, they have, in the voter file, they're called nuns, right? And there are unknowns, there are nuns, and then there are others. And there are a slew of different kinds. Others are about 51,000 outside of like libertarian, green, right? But there's a ton in Pennsylvania, folks. Conservative, natural law, independence, right to life, socialist workers, peace and freedom, on and on and on. All right? And all together, they are about 2.5%. That's it. Or, 2.5%. And the NPAs, non-party affiliated, are the lion's share of non-two parties. And that's typical. All right? All right, moving on. Gender is actually getting more male. Pennsylvania is getting slightly more male. It shifted about 2 points. Yeah, it's 53% female typically in the voter file, and women tend to outvote men in Pennsylvania more often than not. And it's now down to 42% female, and men are now up to about 48%. So we're getting to be a 4-point difference, as opposed to that, could be, 5-6 point spread, right? So it's getting closer. And in an election like we saw in 2020, men actually, and even in 18, men started to vote a little bit at higher rates. All right, just not as much for Republican candidates in many states. There is a ton. I'm not going to go over income. If you have it, only about a quarter is unknown, which means we did a pretty damn good job inferring income among most of the electorate. So 75% of the electorate, we generally know what their income is. That is pretty good. When you go, and why is this inferred in a lot of these cases? And the inference is very, very accurate. Because when you go to register to vote and you get your voter registration card or you do whatever you do, they don't ask you a lot of information. They ask you your name. They ask you your date of birth. They ask you, full name, right, if you got one. They ask you your date of birth. They ask you your address. And they ask you for an ID in most cases, hopefully. What they don't ask you for is religious affiliation. How much do you make a year? What level of education have you completed? A whole slew of data attributes that we would like to know as pollsters, even as people who are trying to, map an electorate. And basically, we have to infer it through these other attributes. And knowing 75% of something out the gate is pretty damn good. All right, it's pretty good. And then we can take a look at exit polling, and we can take a look at geographic detail, and we know from the census, who makes what in different areas. So it provides a much clearer picture. It really does. But it's a lot of math. All right. Oh, and marital status. That has to be inferred through other attributes you probably don't want us to know. But you're typically not asked your marital status, right? So we have to infer that. Married in Pennsylvania actually increased from the last time we looked at this. It was about 33 and change known to be married. And now it's about up to 37 and a half. That's a good sign for Republicans. Married people are more Republican than single people. Mm-hmm. All right. And that's just true. Divorced is a very liberal group. It's true. It's true. Which is why we asked marital status. All right. Now we couldn't. A lot of those are known. And in Pennsylvania, you'll notice there are some inferences in these categories next to other categories next to other, in a category that you wouldn't think we'd know. Sometimes we just know people. Marriage certificates, whatever it may be, we just know. All right. So inferred ethnicity. Okay. And that's another thing. Sometimes you put your race down. Sometimes you don't. Right? 80% Caucasian. Obviously, that's good for Republicans as well. But Asians are now 1.68%. That's a slight bump from not from just a few months ago, because that's not really true. It's a slight bump from 8 years ago. Okay, when they were like 1%, maybe less, like 0.8, right? African Americans 6.8%. Now there's 8 and 8.7 that's unknown. That's obviously, there's a lot of, when it comes to racial inference, we tend to see that unknown group disproportionately non-white. All right. And that's for whatever reason. I have my thoughts on it, but it's for whatever reason. Sorry, I needed to just tell Laura something. All right. And then education. Completed college, 23.4. We know. Graduate school, about 5.5% that we know of. There's a huge unknown. 50.1 if you round. And that's, again, that's common. We don't know what people, what their education status is when they register to vote. That being said, most of the state, population-wise, everyone focuses on the Southeast because of the concentration of population. But geographically, what the rest of the state looks like, looking at this map, right? The vast majority of counties in Pennsylvania are classified as Appalachia. right? So you'll see them it fluctuates. How much they make fluctuates because, especially under Donald Trump, energy jobs that came back to the state of Pennsylvania, skilled trades that came back to the state of Pennsylvania, they actually make a pretty good amount of money. So when a state like Pennsylvania and others, but we can say this with certainty, if they are not a college graduate, yet make $100,000 or more, they were overwhelmingly, not just Republican Trump voters. These are people who are workers, but were doing well for themselves. All right. We had this great report on People's Pundit Daily, I think it was 2018 or 2019, from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, showing the difference in Pennsylvania and other states, but we really focused hard on Pennsylvania because it was important. Pennsylvania and other states like West Virginia and Texas, the change of where under Barack Obama and Joe Biden from 2008 to 2016 or 2009, really, right? And then in 2017 and 2018, the difference between the jobs that were being created and their contribution to gross domestic product. Gross domestic product in the state was rising significantly higher than we had seen it rise under Barack Obama, but also these jobs were goods producing jobs, energy sector jobs, which pay more money. And they also require a supportive economy. So when you bring a manufacturing plant or a pipeline or something to town, there's a whole lot of other stuff that you're going to need to support those workers, or that town that surrounds this plant, or this town that surrounds this pipeline, or this oil well, whatever it may be. You'll need a whole bunch of services that go along with it. But still, you could see that impact that those jobs are having. This was a major, I would argue, a major missed opportunity, or whatever you want to call it, by the Trump campaign and Republicans in general. I say this all the time because it's 100% true, and it's time for everybody to move into the 21st century of politics. Economics is politics, not just in a job number or an unemployment number. Economic strategy is political strategy. And had Trump championed more of that change, all right, let people know where those jobs are coming from and why, then maybe that could have had some kind of an impact. And for those who doubt me on this, understand Glenn Kessler was fact-checking whether Biden would remove these pipelines or not. Understand that Trump had to put up on a Teletron, right, during his campaigns, Joe Biden out, of the horse, right out of the horse's mouth. Mm-hmm. That he would, of course, support a ban on fracking, for instance. He had to do that, but it was already too late. The campaign was winding down. It was coming to a head. I'm talking about this should have been something that the moment that Bureau of Economic Analysis data came out and they had something to support on it, everybody should have known in the state of Pennsylvania. There shouldn't have been a single worker who was shocked that Joe Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. Not a single one. Yet, there are. There are. Unions made a huge push. Union leaders made a huge push to convince their membership that Joe Biden was not Hillary Clinton. And that Joe Biden would not hurt union jobs the way that Barack Obama did and the way Hillary Clinton said she intended to do. That was, of course, that was nonsense, but it worked. And you needed something to combat that. Because from the number of people that we hear from telling us they can't believe Joe Biden did this, I thought Joe Biden wasn't going to do that, is unacceptable for a well-run campaign. All right? It's just it's a messaging failure that should be unacceptable because it's in everything. And I told everybody, viewers, Twitter followers, wait, what do you think the election's going to go? Every day. You see this poll? See that poll? You think Texas is in play? Pennsylvania. That's it. Pennsylvania. Which way do you think the election's going to go? What state's the most important? What do you think? Pennsylvania. Whichever way Pennsylvania goes, that's how we'll know the winner. Pennsylvania. The genius of Trump in 2016 is that he recognized that this map was just this dwindling map for a Republican candidate. And you could not play with their rules anymore. Their rules boxed the Republicans in a corner. Or backed them up into a corner, put them in a box, right? And, Virginia was gone. North Carolina's slipping away. Georgia's getting closer and closer. Florida's always a razor-thin margin. Got to stick to this right here. And basically, it's like playing a game of 9-ball against somebody who's better than you. Spotting them. You can't miss a single shot. Not one shot. Or you'll lose. That's the game Republicans were playing with the Electoral College before Donald Trump. And he recognized it. He changed that. But he changed the message of the party to do that. This time around, Democrats did just enough. And I would argue again. I'm trying to leave the hanky-panky argument, the shenanigans argument out of it, because you should not throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you're a Republican or a Trump supporter, you should not just say, oh, it was stolen and that's it, we did nothing wrong. No, there was a lot that was done wrong. A lot. And basically, there is always a lesson from an election to learn. At least.
For sure.
Oh, multiple lessons. All right. The state is getting hard to poll, by the way, even though we did a great job again. It's getting harder to poll because you have and I know I don't mean to just keep returning to beat them up, but look at Greene County, okay? Look at Greene County. All right. Obviously, Greene and others in this area of Pennsylvania, the old Gore Democrat country, right? This county shifted tremendously to Donald Trump, and I think just is going to keep going. If the Democrats continue to culturally move to the left anyway, then these areas, they'd be more Republican with a Trump-like character on the ballot, but they'd still be Republican. And basically, when you poll these areas, this is why representation is so important, and you cannot rely on randomization anymore. We've already betrayed randomization, and it betrays us back. It just does. That's why I love putting out these PDFs. Look at the different ways to reach people, landlines, cell phones. Guys, just the sheer fact that sometimes you're going to call a cell phone and sometimes you're going to call a landline, even if it's a phone-only poll like New York Times, for instance, right? Siena, New York Times. Nate, the sheer fact that you're calling cell phones and landlines, you have betrayed randomization. You're not calling one population anymore. We have to start thinking of this as different, because that's the way it is. Mm-hmm. They're different populations. Why? Because different groups of people, whether by ideology, Republican, Democrat, something else, or by race, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, right, something else, or by gender, male, female, whatever, different groups of people respond to different modes of collection, whether it's phone to landline, phone to cell phone, SMS to cell phone, online to email, whatever. Different groups of people respond to different modes of collection at different rates. So you're already talking about different populations. So everybody, you would need to look at Greene County. Everybody just understand, you would need to look at Greene County and say, Greene County is this much male, this much female. It's this much white, income, it's this much, education, it's this much, whatever, and get a representative sample of Greene and the surrounding area where you now know what your targets and are, and you meet each quota from. That's the only way. Otherwise, you'll just call Greene County, and like Robert's very perfect example, you'll reach the librarian. And the librarian will tell you, I'm voting for Joe Biden. And you'll reach the librarian's friends, and the school teacher, and this, and that. And maybe you'll reach one steel worker, or one pipe guy, or one whatever. Or one housewife. So you may just come to think, oh my God, there's a massive shift in Greene County. Joe Biden could carry that county. Biden plus 10. Statewide. That's what they're doing. The truth is, randomization is already betrayed. Pennsylvania is an excellent example. It's not about, well, of course I call it the Southeast more. There's it's disproportionate population. It's not, that is too simple. Too black and white. All right, and for those who, and I know there are a lot of you doing this again, Philadelphia County, you can see that very high graph, okay? The size of the graph illustrates how concentrated or not the population is. So if you look at Pennsylvania right there, it means it's a very concentrated area. Population density, the people in that county are located very closely to each other, okay? Or in that area. And then the height is how much the total population is. So you can look at, for instance, Allegheny out west. You'll notice it's high, but it's not as densely populated because there aren't really suburbs of Philadelphia County. There are, but they go into other counties. There aren't rural areas of Philadelphia. That's called Bucks, northern Bucks County and eastern Bucks County. There aren't, so that's why you see Allegheny is a much, wider graph, because Allegheny has Pittsburgh, and then it has the surrounding metro kind of area, suburb area, which is depressed. And then it has the surrounding working class suburbs, which are growing increasingly Republican. And then you have the more rural areas. Allegheny does have rural areas. All right? That's why it's a perfect example of why you see those graphs like that. And then even like Erie County in the Northwest, what that's telling you is Erie County's big, but most of the population in Erie is actually really close to each other. All right? That's the most northwestern county in the state, if you can see that. All right? And center, by the way, you have the college there, State College there. But that's why it was actually closer. And Republicans are actually doing a hell of a job remaining to compete out there, even though it remains the only blue sea dot in a sea of blue in the rest of the state. You can see, look at the population where it's dispersed in Center County, right? Even with the college, you still see there are a lot of other people who live there. And those are Republican neighborhoods, okay? They're just surrounding a more densely populated liberal area. And the same is true of Scranton. You can see that, all right? All right, so it's 11:43 and taking a little 43rd. Little note real quick on the Zoom thing while we talk about this. I have a couple other attributes I want to talk about Pennsylvania, not just education, but I want to talk about religion and by age and by congressional district. But I just want to make this note. Tomorrow I am talking to, totally my fault yesterday with that. Totally my fault. I put it up that it was for yesterday. And that was a communication error on my end. It was not on theirs. It was on mine. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am giving remarks to the Metropolitan Republican Club of New York City about polling and how generally analysts and political strategists first badly collect it and then misinterpret it. You may want to check that out. It'll be on their Facebook and I'll put it up. But that's in the way of our Zoom meeting. So I was thinking of doing a shorter Zoom meeting earlier in the day. I'm hoping a lot of your kids now are out of school. Ours just got out of school. I know a lot of you still work. But especially if it's a quick one, then I should be able to upload it to locals if you miss it. That sucks though, I know, because then you can't participate in it, right? But we'll see. We'll see. I think something's better than nothing, right? Something's better than nothing. So maybe we'll do it around the time that the show typically is, even though it's an off-show day. Maybe we'll do it around 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then this way, some people will at least be able to participate in it. It'll be a shorter one, though, no doubt. All right? I just wanted to say that because that was totally on me. All right. This is another state. And we talked about this in Ohio and Iowa, Florida. This is another state where the shifting voting preference among 30 to 44-year-olds was a big deal. So Donald Trump did the talk before the election was how badly he was doing among seniors. Our polling, and I think it bore out to be true, our polling suggested that yes, there were some seniors who flirted with the idea of voting for Joe Biden, and not all of them came back, but the lion's share did come back to Donald Trump. All right? It was the 45 to 64 age category, which wasn't as dominant as it was for Donald Trump before. But the 30 to 44, especially working full-time people, 30 to 44, those people shifted considerably to the Republican platform in general. All right, it just really couldn't have lost that 45 to 64. Not 65 plus so much. We did, like I said, we did see them come back, but if it would have been a maintenance of those two other older age groups, adding how much better Trump performed among the 30 to 44, that would have overtaken whatever was, well, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they would have just kept going. I can't speak in hypotheticals. But it is, watch that group, because if they keep that group, it's going to be hard for Democrats. It may be, Laura, that in the end, Trump's loss in Pennsylvania, for whatever reason or not, legitimate or not. Look, I'm taking it to my grave. I was right in Pennsylvania on the money.
You were right.
I'm taking it to my grave. Right? I'm allowed to have my opinion. I know what the record investigation is showing. And I'm telling you, I'm taking it to my grave. It was Trump plus 0.8. All right? But anyway, I digress. This group, if this continues, this group may make it increasingly difficult for Democrats to hold on to the state of Pennsylvania. So I'm wondering how long this is going to continue. When we first started looking at this, guys, years ago, Republicans were like in the high 20s in Pennsylvania. Then they moved into the 30s, and under Trump, they hit that 35 mark and just kept going and going as a share of the overall electorate. Democrats were damn near a majority, 48%. It has always been a slight ticking down for Democrats. That's the trend. A slight ticking down for Democrats and a slight increase a moderate but consistent increase for Republicans as a share of the electorate over time. If Democrats keep ticking down, it'll be this group. Because those seniors, they're not, even the ones they won in 2020, they are not reliable votes for Democrats. If Democrats are counting on white seniors, the truth is the country is getting more diverse. So those older age groups are going to get less Republican unless Republicans make inroads with these younger, more diverse people, which they're doing. That's what I'm saying. So I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but the old pattern and the old party affiliation, we went over the party loyalty among black voters in Pennsylvania before the election. The younger you were, the least likely you were to say, I'm a loyal voter of the Democratic Party. If that continues, then seniors, even though they get more diverse, may not move more Democratic than as people expect them to. And if that's the case and Republicans hold that, that's why the working message is the only way forward for Republicans as a party. They have no other future. If they continue to keep the platform of the Jonah Goldbergs and the Mitt Romneys, they don't appeal to the younger, more diverse working coalition. And those people will grow up, and you won't be able to rely on the old white vote, you understand? Which will be a shrinking share of the population. It will be an old, diverse vote. Listen, I understand you have small minds. I understand these people have small, narrow minds. Not the viewers, you are much smarter than these idiots I just mentioned. But try to understand the basics of what I'm saying. The Max Boots and the rest, they don't have a future at all because they don't have a constituency with this younger group. And over time, they will simply vanish. They will vanish. Their worldview will vanish. Then who the hell are you talking to at this point? You know, white evangelicals who believe George? Nope, can't count on them. They abandoned George W. Bush and his nation-building efforts. That's why Bush's approval fell into the 30s and further in the first place. So what group, what core constituency is Mitt Romney advocating on speaking to? What core constituency are all of these National Review, David French's, and the rest of them? Who are they talking to? Because they're a very ever-shrinking share of the older voting group right now. And they're nothing of the under 45. Nothing. They don't exist. You don't have a constituency. You don't have a future. So I don't see where you're going with this. That 30 to 44 shift, which not only I, but Matt at Insight Advantage too, he saw it. That shift is important because it's the future. Political coalitions are funny things. The only thing consistent about them that you can count on is that they consistently evolve. And a real, or one political strategist, one that's like worth any of his weight at all, doesn't look at the here and now. They look at the here and now and 4 years from now, and 8 years from now, and 16 years from now, and 32 years from now. 32 years ago, there will be no Bill Kristols. 32 years from now, 32 years from now, there will be no Max Boots. 32 years from now, there will be no Jonah Goldbergs. 32 years from now, there will be no Romneys. Maybe they'll lie their way into office because there will always be lying politicians. But there will be no constituency for these people. They will not exist. Whatever we want to call it, the neocon, the anti-Trump, old guard GOP sweater vest wearing, right? Where in society do you see them right now trying to leave their mark on a younger, up-and-coming voting group, demographic group at all? Even whites, 18 to 29? Even whites, 30 to 44? No. They speak to the 45 and above crowd who want to go on cruises with them and think that's special or something. They speak to the donor class that loves having theoretical conversations over overly priced meals. They are nowhere right now. They don't have Hillsdale. They don't have Liberty. They got nothing. They have nothing. They don't even have CPAC anymore. They sure as hell don't have Charlie Kirk, who probably is doing the most for younger groups. Somebody pointed out to me, where is this a viable strategy? Point on the map in somewhere in society, an institution, hell, they seeded academia. At one time, they had some of academia. They ceded that to liberals. They have nothing in the entertainment industry. Where are they convincing these younger people? Where are they building a future for themselves? There is no future for the Republican Party without the populist, working class message that Donald Trump injected into the party. There is no future. The rest is a fantasy. An absolute fantasy. All right? Guys, go down for the PDF readers. Look at the age categories. I know it's a little bit difficult sometimes because we give you literally every age. It's not 45 to 64. It's 45. 145,000, 138, 1.77%, 66, 143,000, 189, 1.74%. Look at the groups, guys, between the ages of 29 and 44. 30, 135,990. Even 28, 131,346. 32, 135,803. 33, 132,082. Where are they going to talk to the rest of these people? 70, 120,000, and it goes down from there. Are you ready? I mean, that's who these people are talking to. That's what they got. A lot of them are that old at this point. 60, 155, 837. 74, 113,752. 75, 76,915. You understand where I'm going with this? Why is it so impactful when Democrats win 18 to 29s by that kind of margin? Why is it so impactful when they win 30 to 44s by that kind of margin? That's where the future is. And the 45 to 64 is a big group. It almost always is. And you really can't afford to lose much of that. All right. But as those people mature. So 4 years ago, somebody was 44 and said they voted for Hillary Clinton. They're now 48. And they're in the different age group. So we're going to see some demographic changes move those numbers. The only way for Republicans to offset that is to do better with younger workers. Of all colors. Of all shapes. Of all sizes. And they're never going to do that. Listening, no offense, to Ben Shapiro. The guy's been touring colleges forever. I don't see a constituency for him in Pennsylvania. There is in Wisconsin, though. In places like Wisconsin and Iowa, there's that very... But they came home for Donald Trump. They came home for him. They did. I don't see where... I mean, I could just keep naming the same names, but these same neocons who still call themselves Republicans, even all of these people, the ones the media love to latch on to. They don't exist. Nobody in these categories gives a rat's, gives a darn, censor over there, what those people have to say. They want to know how you're going to deal with the issues that one man in the last 20 years has been talking about. Now, take the good with the bad with Donald Trump if you're a Republican, Take the good with the bad, but the message itself was a winner. It's a winner. All right. Speaking of which, it is becoming, or the talk that Donald Trump wants to run again in 2024 is getting louder. Much louder. It's at the point now where he just basically hasn't said, yeah, I'm going to run. But he clearly wants to. The other day he was fuming. Not like mad and having a canary, but he was very, very upset over just everything that's going on. And he's like, this guy is destroying our country. It's been a couple months. And he's destroying everything. He's ruining the employment situation, the employment recovery. The Middle East is crashing. Nobody is afraid to rein in cyber actors anymore. It's a joke. Oh, I forgot religion. Oh, wow. You know what? After the show, I'll put religion back up. But that's something I wanted to talk about because there's a big Catholic constituency and there's a big Protestant constituency in Pennsylvania, which clearly helps Republicans. It's gotten I can't believe it, but I guess the Protestant constituency, I thought Catholics would grow at a faster rate. But at least in the last year or so, that hasn't been the case. But the Irish Catholic, Italian Catholic, and even to some extent Hispanic, there's not a big Hispanic population in Pennsylvania. And so that's not really contributing to it. It's Irish and Catholic. All right. But they're swinging. They can be swinging. Mm-hmm. Especially that, those are some of the workers that Trump may have, I don't like to use the word lost, because when you add voters to your prior totals, you don't really lose anyone in net. That's not what happened here. I mean, you add over 11 million voters, several 100,000 in Pennsylvania. You don't lose anyone. Maybe the mind changers are fractions of the population. What happened here are records that hadn't voted in a very long time, magically voted. That's what, and records, like I said, that are ineligible, frankly. That happened. Get over it. All right. We'll be back in 2 minutes. And there's a couple things about, speaking of the Middle East, a couple of misnomers I wanted to bring up and set the record straight. And then that's a wrap. But we'll be back in about 2 minutes.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And we're back to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Sign up to Locals and you'll get these cool PDFs, peoplespundit.locals.com. It's May 26th, and we are only about halfway there with the public polling project. when Robert and I did What Are the Odds the other day. We forgot to talk about that. All right. So the link is in the description as always. Share it with your friends. If you've already contributed, we thank you for it. Now, I'm getting a little bit worried because when there's like over $3,000 sitting in there, not hitting the mark yet, and we're getting into the summer, I'm getting worried that it's just gonna hit. It's gonna be in this time frame where people aren't going to want to pay attention anymore, and I don't want to deliver something that could have been better or like a week or two before. So I'm getting a little bit concerned. So do what you can. Share it with friends and whatever, and get it out there. That would be an enormous help. All right. And let's see. Whatever else do I have here? That's it. That's about it with show announcements. Like I said, Zoom call tomorrow. I guess we'll do around 11, right? We'll do that Zoom call at 11. Don't miss my remarks during my it's Zoom. Normally I'd go to New York City and do the interview with them, but we're going to do, or not Zoom. I guess they're using StreamYard or whatever, but it'll be an online interview with the Metropolitan Republican Club where I will do my level best to set people straight about polling failures and why polling failures are going to continue to happen and why Republicans are stupid to listen to public polling, to listen to media polling, university polling, and damn sure dumb to listen to Nancy Pelosi's polling instead of doing what they could have done to win some of these House seats. And honestly, Democrats greatly benefit from Republican stupidity. Republican leadership stupidity. They greatly benefit. For instance, attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene for the comment about vaccine passports being akin to what the Germans did to the Jews during the Holocaust may not have been the right comparison, but I didn't hear Kevin McCarthy when associates of Hamas were rolling the halls of Congress with Rashida Tlaib. This is why their own voters hate them. They're so busy attacking other conservatives. By the way, did you guys see the report today about monitoring of bank accounts, financial institutions? All right. They got their foot in the door with that. Even though Tucker reported it and nobody else in mainstream media seemed to care. The propagandist media, including his own network, which is also debunked, just garbage. All right. They used those big, bad insurrectionists to get their foot in the door without warrants, looking at your financial information. Oh, we're just looking to see who may have participated in that horrific January 6th riot. So we're just looking for financial transactions with traveling and lodging. Not anymore. Now they're looking yours too. Because once they use somebody as an example, a test subject, like once they ban Alex Jones from social media, and the Ben Shapiros of the world and the other so-called conservatives of the world don't say a damn thing, then a whole lot of other people are next. Because you give them an inch, they take a foot. That's what the powerful have always done. That is human history. You give them an inch, they take a foot. So you gave them the inch with those big bad rioters. And now they're taking a foot. By the way, that report real quick, before we get back into Pennsylvania. And thanks, George. Or James. That was just like, bam. Right? Just like, I just saw that. But I'm going to photos here. I can't put out the actual docs because I just can't. I have to protect sources here. Yeah. So basically, the report on whether or not these people, and if the January 6th commission was being like, in good faith, and it was, a legitimate investigation that didn't already draw conclusions before they investigated anything, then I would actually be all for, that. But that's not what's happening here. And that has been used, obviously, to go after people in different ways. And the other day, there was a report which a commission would probably stumble upon this information if they were legitimately investigating it, but they won't. You won't hear about it. There was a report that there was, had to be somebody who let these people in to the Capitol building because of the way the lock structure works, right? It's magnetic locks. You have to have a request for exit or a request for entry or fire alarm could trip them, and then they would automatically open. But, I mean, you could put an M1 Abrams, chain it to the door, and you probably rip the handles off. Like you're not going to take the door with it. Mm-hmm. All right, that's how strong these are. Anyway, the guy who was the source of that report was a member of the Oath Keepers, which is a group of like former military and law enforcement who take their oath, according to them, take their oath to defend the Constitution, seriously, and from foreign enemies, foreign and domestic. And he said, I don't want to come forward because I'm thinking that the government's probably going to arrest me soon, right? He'd be right. Maybe. I don't know that he personally, but there's no doubt. They're right next to Antifa on the list of government targets right now, along with a slew of other people I guarantee you've never heard of before. All right? Sovereign citizens. Keck is a meme, but the movement too. We do know the Boogaloo. 2%ers, Nationalist Social Club. These are white supremacist groups, by the way. Mm-hmm. Nationalist Socialist Order. I can't even pronounce this one. It starts with an A. I'll do my level best here. A Tornwaffen Division, the Universal Order. They're all with the Proud Boys. All right. The Iron Guard. The Celtic Cross. I mean, admittedly, maybe some of you guys know who these people are. I have no clue. All right. I've never heard of them. Swastika is apparently a group. And then that's with different labels and symbols, all right? And that's next to like 88, the SS bolts. I mean, a lot of this stuff you would know. There are 3 out of all of these examples. 3, because the literature it's not just anti-right wing, it's anti-white, right? And it's the way they use words, right? So anytime they refer to protest or what's the word they use for some of these others? Anytime they they'll call something Antifa did and BLM a gathering, a protest, a demonstration. But anytime it's an alleged right-wing reference, it's mob or riot. All right. So the literature is very concerning in that sense. All right. But there are only three black separatist group examples, and BLM ain't one of them. All right. Nation of Islam, the new Black Panther Party, Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Now, those we do know. There is no dozen or more examples of groups you've never heard of before, like there is on the right. All right. Let's get back to, hold on. There's a slew of groups here that actually have sued the Southern Poverty Law Center for calling them hate groups. All right. So Americans for Legal Immigration is on here. No kidding. Americans for Legal Immigration. They're right next to the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge.
Oh,
that's the same group they put them in with. I'm not even joking. The Loyal White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, same group. Israel United in Christ, they put them in there with all these different groups, all right? And the Black Panther Party and the Nation of Islam is associated in that same tier, all right? But I'm trying to give you an example. Okay, Antifa. All right, so Antifa is an anti-fascist and anti-racist political movement in the U.S. It is highly decentralized and comprises an array of autonomous groups aiming to achieve their objectives through the use of both violent and non-violent direct action, rather than through policy reform. Supporters engage in protests and demonstrations, seeking to combat the fascist element in our society, along with racists such as neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other right-wing extremists. In other words, yes, Antifa on some occasion will engage. They do both. They're violent and peaceful. Bruce Goosefala. What's that? What's
Rusava.
yeah. Right. Anger management. Right. They're both they're both, peaceniks and violent protesters, but they do so for a good cause. That's how it reads. They do so for a good cause. You see, they're violent, but only because they're going after fascists. There are fascists in our society. All right? They're violent, but only because they're anti-racist. Is Antifa anti-racist? I don't think so.
No, I think they're very racist.
There's some. They hate all races equally if you have a certain viewpoint. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what you're talking about. All right. By the way, here's the Oath Keepers, the organization for that guy, the source. Are you ready? It's so small, and I'm afraid to show the camera or anything because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But here we go. This is of Antifa again. Sorry. Members directly confront these far-right extremists and sometimes law enforcement, which may involve a digital activism, doxing, harassment, even physical violence and property damage against these who identify as belonging to the far right. So it's all right because they're like freedom fighters. You know what I mean? All right, so on Oath Keepers, an American far-right anti-government militia organization comprised primarily of current and former military, police, and first responders. Their purpose and beliefs are to uphold the oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's like, well, okay. They've never been violent. Their primary purpose is to uphold their oath. What's the problem here? Right? Right? Well, what's the problem? This is the problem. The leader of the Oath Keepers, Jessica Watkins, is currently being charged with, quote, crimes of terrorism after she participated in the mob that stormed the U.S. Capitol during the insurrection on January 6th. Very different terms you're hearing, right? Mm-hmm. Very different terms. And they're right next to QAnon, right? Which you guys know I've beaten up pretty good. All right? There's a whole page on Boogaloo, and there is a Black Lives Matter reference here. It's incredible that they are... Look, I'm just going to say, I'll read it. Black Lives Matter, BLM, is a decentralized political anti-police movement. You keep noticing that word decentralized, right? Is it? Doesn't it have leaders? First of all, it has a leader. And then it has a leader chapter, right? A chapter leader. And then it has different regional leaders. Is it really decentralized? It's not. All right? That's the only time they actually use the phrase anti-police movement, though. That protests police brutality against black people and advocates to defund the police. BLM began in 2013 with the hashtag Black Lives Matter, after the acquittal in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. After the acquittal in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. Because Trayvon Martin died because George Zimmerman was acting in self-defense. Yeah. All right? You missed that part. The movement became nationally recognized for street demonstrations following the 2014 deaths of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and Eric Gardner in New York City. Since the Ferguson protests, there are protests. The city didn't burn to the ground.
By itself.
No mob, no riot. Like the other terminology. Mm-hmm. This was a demonstration. It was a protest. His stepfather wasn't out there going, burn this to the ground. Following them, participants in the movement have demonstrated against the deaths of other African Americans at the hands of the police and in police custody. Again, the general thing here is that it's a good thing that was me. The general thing here is that there's justification behind the actions of BLM and Antifa and these demonstrations, their protests, and they're fighting not just an extremist, but an almost evil element in our society, right? Whereas with the other groups who can be, and by the way, what they'll call far-right extremism, you will generally construe as mainstream conservatism. All right. But that's the difference in how these things are portrayed. This is very Marxist in its nature. Marxists do this. That's what they do. They use and how it's like a war of narrative. It's how things are phrased and then the lists, right? Mm-hmm. All right. The movement gained international attention during the 2020 George Floyd protests. Buildings weren't burnt to the ground during that protest. Although most BLM activists do not carry weapons. Oh, man. A few on occasion have participated in open carry marches. So they actually connect them, and I know the guy they're talking about right now. His crime was talking to the right during dueling demonstrations, which became a overall conversation on a stage. And then he later did participate in an open carry march because what they were saying about how gun control was originally used to oppress blacks in this country, he heard about it. He was convinced of, he's a smart man. And he participated later in a right to carry protest. So now BLM is generally nonviolent and they don't carry weapons, except for that one who thought for himself. He advocates open carry. Well, that doesn't mean he's violent. Believing in the right to carry a weapon, believing in the right to bear a weapon for self-defense does not make you violent.
Yeah. I get you.
It's going on and on and on. It's just, that's the product of the work that Joe Biden put in charge to oversee anti-discrimination training in the government and military. That's what's been disseminating. That's what's been disseminating. There are threats in this, which I would continue reading if I wasn't just reading for 20 minutes straight. Take my word for it. I'll read it on another show. There are threats to remove you from your job if you like a post that is deemed to be right-wing extremism. And again, they'll reference people multiple times and always call them by their correct title. Donald Trump is referred to repeatedly as Donald J. Trump and not President or former President Donald J. Trump. There are former everything in here.
Not to mention you can't get certain promotions if you're not vaccinated.
You won't. But that's all. That's a whole other thing. How they're forcing members of the military to wear their medical record on their face. Mm-hmm. All right. And you just won't end up with if you are against their efforts to get vaccinated, you are put under a microscope. But in any event, there are threats to remove your security clearance. Mm-hmm. All right. Your crime could be that you liked a post from Donald Trump. I mean, they're very, very vague on what constitutes right-wing extremism. There's one for every one reference to an Antifa post or something. There's 10 from people you know and people you don't know. Mm-hmm. If you would have liked Donald Trump's video, his speech on January 6th, the very speech in which he said, "Do not be violent." If you would have liked that, you could have lost your security clearance. Yep. If you were to like it right now, you'd lose your security clearance. And you'll definitely be put under some kind of review. And you'll probably be booted from the military. If you think I'm kidding, look at what happened over simply opposing speaking out against communism. Mm-hmm. I don't care what Republicans do to get that officer his job back. It's not coming back. It's the military. Once that's done, it's done. Even if he was reinstated, it would be reinstated with the mark in his jacket that says he was removed for misconduct. He's done. It's over. His career's finished. Where we're at is extremely terrifying because it's arbitrary as hell, guys. I'm telling you, it's arbitrary as hell. It's not, you know what, the Proud Boys are extremists. That's it. That's not it. They tie in mainstream conservatism with QAnon. They tie in there is no line.
No.
There is no line. And there are many, many outs for people who support Black Lives Matter. There are, by the way, the embassies around the world right now are flying BLM flags. Right now.
It's ridiculous.
And they're supposed to be, some are extreme. They're in there. They just make excuses for them. They make excuses for why BLM burns down police departments.
And their cities.
And why Antifa burns down federal buildings. They make excuses for this. Those are demonstrations.
But what about the black peoples who have businesses there who say...
They don't care about them. They don't care about the law-abiding. They don't care. They don't care about that. The law-abiding citizens, the damage that is done to them. Those are demonstrations for a good cause. You know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. They're making excuses for that behavior. Meanwhile, there is no such out. There are no such caveats when it comes to what may or may not be construed as. And by the way, if your commanding officer or your bureau chief, if you're at the FBI, or your station chief, if you're at CIA, if they're liberal and they think that they don't like you, it's very easy for them to pin some kind of like extremist view on you. Easy. Very easy. And you'll at the very least, you're done. You're gone.
Dishonorably, too.
In the military, you're gone. Mm-hmm. That's a dishonorable discharge. You're finished. All right, and it's not joining the military or even joining the government doesn't forfeit your First Amendment rights. Mm-hmm. It doesn't forfeit your Fourth Amendment right. It doesn't forfeit rights. It's just that you have to put your views behind the civilian government that gives you direction. So you may not agree with the war in Iraq, but if you're ordered to invade, you invade. You may not agree with the foreign policy that's being pushed by an embassy in Kiev, for instance. But when you're given the orders, you're given the orders. It's terrifying. It doesn't mean you don't have the right still to hold those views.
And vice versa,
and to express those views and to support those views.
But also vice versa, though. If you agree that certain country is being persecuted, you can't just go in and
of course
rockets blaring without orders.
And remember last summer with the National Guard?
Yeah.
According to this, apparently you can take a knee in support of demonstration, right? But if you disagree and you support police, you cannot show up to support the police.
No.
I mean, this is nuts. So because if it wasn't arbitrarily applied, then why is it okay for certain ones to take knees? Mm-hmm. That's participating in a demonstration, which according to this is you will lose your security clearance for that. You're no longer allowed to do that. That's bull. It's whatever. It's participating in a demonstration that they don't agree with. That's the truth. This has got to be stopped. This is really un-American. It's un-American. All right, it's 12:30. So now I want to just touch on a couple of things that I heard after the debate. The great debate in the Middle East. Robert Barnes and Nick Fuentes, I thought both really conducted themselves very well. I just think there's a couple of things that I personally want to bring up because had I had a microphone, I'd have said it and brought it up myself, because then I saw on Twitter there were a lot of people who didn't seem to understand this, okay? A couple of things, too. Military aid and foreign aid are not the same thing. There is a ton of foreign aid that is not military at all by nature, right? So foreign aid to UNRWA, which is then given to the Palestinians, supposedly to build medical institutions and schools, right? Is not military aid. That is humanitarian aid in essence. But there were all different kinds of foreign aid. And they didn't use that for schools and medical buildings. They used it to buy concrete to build the terror tunnels. All right. But that's still not, that's totally different. So I think at one point yesterday, there was this blurring of the lines last night about what constitutes different kinds of aid. And without a doubt, Israel does get foreign aid, but the figure that Nick cited is military aid. Okay, so military aid is not the same thing as foreign aid, nor does it come close to the totality of foreign aid that is being dispersed. All right, that's number one. Number two, the United States did not give Israel nuclear weapons. All right, that's if we're gonna have these conversations, they need to be accurate. All right, first of all, Norwegian and British aid is how Israel got fissile material in the first place. Uranium, I believe, was given by the British, and plutonium was given by the Norwegians. They were both busted because of intel leaks. All right, that ultimately turned out to be document leaks, and they were embarrassed because they were telling the entire rest of the world, "Oh no, we're not helping them." They were. All right, and then later, in the '60s, Argentina sold yellow cake to Israel, which we actually tried to stop. Kennedy was opposed adamantly and actually implemented and oversaw inspections against the Israeli nuclear weapons program. He was actively trying to stop it. Israel was very good at duping us. That's how they know that Iran lies about these inspections, because they know how easy it is to fool international inspectors. It's very, very easy. Okay? That's what history shows us. Forget about what people will tell you about procedure and all that other crap. History tells us it's actually very easy, more likely than not, that country will dupe international inspectors. All right? So anyway, when Johnson took over, he also pushed not to have the nuclear weapons program. The inspections weren't as priority as Kennedy wanted them, but that's so much with Johnson. He didn't really carry out Kennedy's wishes on certain things. He was his own president. But they duped Johnson too. In any event, Johnson tried to get those transactions blocked with both Norwegian and Argentina. Yeah. Both of them. But it didn't happen. Unfortunately, it just didn't happen. They got around it. And then basically, Nixon dropped the inspections. He didn't really enforce them. And some would say he kind of stepped aside and allowed Israel to do their thing. But he told the prime minister when they met that he cannot make any overt moves towards the nuclear weapons program, and he could not do a display of it. He would he didn't say you can, or I'll I'm going to do something about it, but he said, I will be very unhappy if you do. And private Nixon tapes and other documents clearly show Nixon did not want Israel to develop a nuclear weapons program, even though they had a functional one by the 60s. They just didn't have a robust program. He didn't want it because he believed fully that it would start an arms race in the Middle East. So he thought if Israel got it, then everybody was going to want to get it. All right, which I would say half came to fruition, not all. I mean, you have Pakistan and then of course Pakistan, then India, right? So I guess some of that happened, and then the last thing to note here is that the actual Israeli nuclear weapons program, while it had been ongoing for a while, and them trying to obtain fissile material, and they did have a functioning. I think their first one was in '66. They didn't even ramp their program up until the 6-Day War in the 60s. All right, that is when they said, enough is freaking enough. And if you want to know why, it's because that would be the last time that essentially a giant Arab coalition would stab them in their back. And then they weren't just dealing anymore with Palestinians and their supporters. They were concerned that they would be dealing with nuclear states. All right, so that is the reality. So I don't know where people are like, oh, Israel, if we didn't give if we didn't, because that started from the idea that the Israeli lobby, Nick's position is, it comes down to whether or not you believe that Israel is staving off a grave threat to the U.S. That's really what it comes down to. And also, if you really want to have some of the, conditions argument, if you want to be able to, if you're religious, if you're Christian, this is why most evangelicals support Israel. If you're Christian, you want to be able to go to the Holy Land. You want the Holy Land to be able to be visited and pilgrimages to be taken without a freaking Knights Templar being reinstituted, right? Then Israel is clearly the only option. And I would say I do agree it is a binary choice. You can't just not make a choice. There's just too much. Do you agree that Israel helps to stave off a grave threat, and if Israel did not exist, then a Palestinian majority in Israel would be a greater threat, especially with the control of the nuclear weapons, Israel's nuclear arsenal? Would they be a greater threat to the United States than Israel? And ultimately, somebody like Nick would say, I think that the U.S. could be safer because of the Israeli lobby. And if everyone was gone, then we'd be safer. If you think the Israeli lobby is more of a threat than a Palestinian majority in Israel controlling the nuclear weapons, then that's it. Nothing anybody can say will make you change your mind. I think you're nuts, but personally, but nothing will make you change your mind. The bottom line is, they would not be able to just get rid of their nukes. Well, Israel and the West would get rid of them before they took over. That's not how it's going to work, folks. Just like Donald Trump couldn't do anything before he had to leave too. I mean, just key or central like that. The Palestinian goal is by population, just like all other Muslim. It's a jihad. It's just a different kind of jihad. It's replacement. It's what we're dealing with here at home, which you're not allowed to talk about, otherwise you're a racist. It's replacement. It's not just a race. It's a worldview and an ideology that they are attempting with population to overwhelm and stamp out. Defeat through replacement. And the criticism I have of Israel is that they're fighting a losing war. They're managing a decline. If you're not willing to stop the central goal, because they want to be seen by the West as defenders of human rights and allowing Palestinians full citizenship and the right to vote, and that keeps up. They're finished anyway. They are finished anyway. And the Palestinian majority would take control of a government and form a governing coalition. It's a parliamentary government, which promptly would be dissolved and changed into a theocracy, by the way. But before that happens, nobody would be dismantling the nuclear weapons that they had before the Palestinians took over. That's crazy. You know nothing about nuclear weapons if that's the case. We are storing a ton of unused and used, which we don't anymore, material in mines all over this country. Salt mines in all sorts of areas. You can just get rid of it. You just don't put it on a rocket and blow it out to space. I don't know what people are thinking. It will be there when somebody else takes over. And by the way, just like any other statist movement, if replacement works in Israel, they will be emboldened, and you'll be next. And that's a certainty. That's a certainty. And I'm not saying this, I don't want to keep talking about it's all racist. The FBI's investigation concluded this. They don't have the weapons to win. They have to win by other means. Replacement is their weapon. And it's not just Israel who is the target. Their enemy. The United States is as well. You should read some of them. See how you stomach them.
Brendan,
go now. Go breed with their women. See if you can stomach a few pages of it.
Mm-hmm.
The
Islamic doctrine is Taqiya. It's rooted in Islamofascism. That's what Brendan said.
Israel?
The Islamic doctrine.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, this is why and it is true, the history, what Robert was saying with why the Palestinians, supported by the left. The left supported the Palestinians and always did. The communists remade the narrative into the little guy versus the colonizers, the great capitalist evil. And they used it as a cudgel. in their ideological war, which we took as the domino theory, got us into Vietnam. If one spreads it'll just spread all over the world like a wild. But the Nazis supported the Palestinians, folks. I mean, the Nazis were for their cause. The commies were for their cause. Now the radical left is for their cause. They all share a central belief, or they all share a common belief in centralized power. Mm-hmm. If you're for Sharia law, if you're for a Muslim doctrine at all, that's a centralized power. We have an example to the north that we could look at. It's called Iran. And leftists believe in centralized power too. Where they clash is that where that power is derived. From where that power is derived. Democrats are, have this element in their party, but generally that left-wing element does not believe that God granted rights. That's about the only thing that's shaped, right? That's the only thing that overlaps in Venn diagram style between the right and the American right and Islam. But they don't really recognize rights in the same way that we do anyway. Look, you have to have an honest conversation, not be afraid of people labeling you as, whatever it has to be an honest conversation. Right now, that's the problem Israel has. They're not allowed to have an honest conversation with themselves about what is happening. And they're fighting a losing war. And in the end, the numbers will overwhelm them. And they'll be gone. That's their future. It's sad, but it's true.
But
if this continues.
I think they need to be the monsters of that side. Because, honestly, do you want a Muslim culture to take over there? Because
you'll never be able to visit the holy sites. They'll never be able to visit the holy sites.
They'll be destroyed. They won't even exist.
No, they'll keep. Of course, they'll keep but they will not. Look, Christians believe it's a holy site over there. It's just that you will not be allowed to visit it. Jews will not be allowed to visit it. And it's not like we have to have a hypothetical conversation here. Very, very. This is not. The golden era of Sahaladin, where everybody was allowed to come. That is not the norm. Even with the Ottomans, it's not the norm. It sure as hell isn't the norm. In the pre-Israeli state of the 20th century, it was not the norm. So even with colonial rule, they didn't want them there. So it's not... You cannot simply say... I'm not going to make a choice. Israel's bad too. And another thing, another misnomer. Not making a choice is making a choice, right? And Israel is spies on us, guys. Allies spy on allies, friends spy on friends all the time. I don't know what the hell that means. Mm-hmm. We all spy on us. Israel, perhaps more than anybody else, has a right, or not a right, but you should expect it more than from your other friends, because Israel. It doesn't know which way the wind is blowing over here, guys. Mm-hmm. And 1 minute we're their greatest friend,
them from right? Pure terror.
1 minute we're their greatest friend. Mm-hmm. The next minute, he has to deal with somebody like Barack Obama. And it is true. Another part of this, it is true that Democrats and Republicans historically have both supported Israel in much the same sense, but that's not really true now. In the era of Barack Obama, changed that dramatically. And it's not about, the flow of money. There wasn't any less foreign aid militarily. But it's what kind of Israel they're trying to control is the central question. Mm-hmm. Is Israel better under the leadership? Is Israel more secure under the leadership of Likud and those who are looking out for the rights of Israelis and the Israeli faith? Or are they in better shape in control of people who sympathize with the Palestinian cause and want as many Palestinians to move in as possible? Because that's what Barack Obama was doing. Mm-hmm. He was trying to defeat Likud so he could change Israel from the inside anyway. So they win anyway. And he doesn't have to lose his leverage, and he doesn't have to expose himself to political damage. They win anyway. I just hate the hypocritical... It's like a fake choice. It's a fake choice. Uh-huh. It's a fake choice. Well, we have to deal with America and not worry about Israel first. You can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Mm-hmm. Of course you can. And you are dealing with America if you deal with that.
Well, the
You are.
thing is, Israel is in America's best interest because it is a
Without them gone,
feeler
Laura,
out there.
they get 100% of their energy on us.
Yeah.
100% of their energies will be on us. Right?
And you're a fool to think otherwise.
A fool. A complete fool.
And it's just simple as that. I'm just sick and tired of people who are like, oh, well, I don't, what about America? No, you can't do anything outside.
We're not saying go launch a ground invasion
No,
of
exactly.
Palestine. Nobody's talking about that.
But I'm saying they need the right to know if we are sending Iran, Iraq, all this money, so they need to be prepared to know what kind of situation they're going to run into.
Right. So 1 minute, they have an ally who's doing everything in their power to make sure that Iran's export of oil is the lowest ever in the history of their
Existence.
of their modern existence because of since the revolution, which means they don't have the money to spend on all their little extracurricular activities like Hezbollah and all the others that they support, right? And Yemen, right? The proxy war they're waging in Yemen and other places. They don't have that money. And then the next minute, they have another president who's trying to reinstate all the money that was flowing to them to begin with, and worse. Help their, I don't know what I would call a state like Russia, but Putin is without a doubt one of their sponsor states.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
And Putin would like a strong Iran. Can't blame him. If I was Vladimir Putin, I'd want a strong Iran too. I'd want a strong Iran. I'd want a strong Syria. Mm-hmm. But that's why you should have left Iraq right where it was. And Saddam Hussein right where it was. All right. I do have to get out of here a little bit early today.
Can I do a fun question?
Yeah. You want to? It's really 12:50, so I got 4 minutes actually.
All right. So Jay Patel would like to know if Rich could remove one person from the Republican Party, who would it be?
Mitch McConnell.
God dang it! All right.
Well, I mean,
go ahead. Say Mitch
there are
McConnell.
other people I would like to boot even, more. But who's doing the most damage? Mitch McConnell.
All right. And who is the one person other than DeSantis who is the next rising star for the Republicans?
That's a great question. 1 second.
He's
Let me take
killing
that
me.
gum out. Well, yeah, it gets if two
Yeah.
2 hours without a nick starts to 2 hours without a nickerette starts to get to me. I've been putting a lot of thought to this, and the truth is, I don't see it.
Somebody said Hawley.
I don't see how he's not ready for primetime. He's not ready, and I got criticisms of him myself, but he's a rising star. He is. He's just not on that level. Mike Braun turned out to be an utter disappointment. Rick Scott has, he's turning out to be a little bit too pro-intervention for me, Rick Scott.
Mm-hmm.
It's starting to bother me a little bit. Come on, Rick.
Cotton.
Get yourself back in shape. Cotton is a warmonger. Sorry, guys.
Glenn Jacobs.
No. They just don't have the stature. Mm-hmm. They don't have the stature.
Colton Boyles. Hey, these people are just
stop.
throwing names out there.
Just stop, guys. No, nobody's got it. And I think the Republican Party would have been better off to have somebody like a Trump run but isn't Donald Trump, and I'm thinking that they just don't have it. So Trump's thinking more and more about running. And it's like, well, what kind of Donald Trump is going to run? It may be beneficial for the Republican Party if he comes back a more mature statesman, pull a Grover Cleveland, but be a better candidate. You owe it to your voters to not be a schmuck all the time, Donald, all right? Or Mr. President. You do. You owe it to them not to pick fights that were unnecessary and turn people off. I have seen image makeovers. And I just mentioned one, Rick Scott. I've seen image makeovers. It is possible. He just needs to be a different person. He needs to be less. It's not ego. He just felt like he had to respond to everything, and he just felt like he had to be funny with everything. I got to tell you, he's a serious man.
So all of these like stunts he would pull sometimes were stunning to me, because you get in a room with any of the Trumps, their personalities are very impressive, they're articulate. He's not always that way. And I just don't understand why he didn't bring the serious Donald to the table more for Americans to see, you know? And if he was to bring that Donald back, then I think Democrats have a serious problem. I just don't know whether or not Donald Trump, at this point, would hold back the message in the movement. Right now, the answer is no, because they just don't have anybody. But he needs a new VP. It can't be Pence anymore. It has to be somebody who was like and I wouldn't say an acolyte, but a student of his movement that was loyal. It has to be like a Ron DeSantis. Yeah, it has to be like a Ron DeSantis. And then, by the way, Nate, Florida would not be competitive, all right? So stop polling. It wouldn't be competitive anyway. If Trump was to run in 2024 again, he's going to win Florida by 5 points now. So it's not going... The demographic shift is... He locked it in. And as long as they don't kick themselves, they'll be all right. You know, but if he was to come back, it'd be another 90,000. Another 90,000. These people got families. Okay? And you want family-based immigration. This is one of the very few examples of when it comes back to bite you in the butt, you know? And it's in this case, it's going to benefit Republicans. But I don't see it yet. When I do see it, I promise I'll let you know. I just don't see that person yet. I really don't. All right, folks, with that in mind, tomorrow we'll do an earlier Zoom call, even though I know we decided on the afternoon, but we're just, the actually
Later
early
in the
evening.
evening.
Yeah, I just can't do that tomorrow. So don't miss that interview with the Metropolitan Republican Club. That will be good times. And then, of course, Friday, we'll be back with Inside the Numbers. All right? And we'll be back, by the way, with another state. And you'll see soon. All right, so we'll see you when we see you, folks. Thanks for joining us. All the best. Share the Big Data Poll Public Polling Project.
Wait.
Share it, share it, share it, share it.
And then
All right, so with that, I will see you tomorrow morning and tomorrow night. All the best.
we appreciate you guys.
As
Love
always.
you.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just
Dun 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 dun.